Hello, 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 my friends. It's Catherine Ewing here from Sacred Heart Alchemy and Divinely Inspired Feminine Leaders. So it's an unseasonably warm day here in Connecticut, like 68 or so degrees. So I'm taking advantage of, we've had a few days of lovely weather, today being the warmest, and I'm out doing one of my favorite walks next to a river. Maybe you can see it or hear it. It's just lovely to be outside. While I was walking, I was inspired to jump on and talk to you about trust. It's something we've been talking about in my women's 6-month group called Unleashed. And it's such an important topic for women in particular, men as well. But I have to say, you know, in my career, so to speak, over the last 40 years, my work has primarily been with women, right? From the areas of sexual assault and rape crisis work to domestic violence, shelter work, to working with women and children in poverty, and eventually as a worker in child protective services, where I specialized in child sexual abuse and severe physical abuse and child death. That was all before, and then I spent some years in the school system, but that was all before I went into psychotherapy, which honestly, I never thought I would do. I never set out to be a psychotherapist. In fact, I had some of my own preconceived notions about psychotherapy and entitled people who engaged in psychotherapy. Needless to say, after 27 years of being a therapist and now about 10 years or so of coaching alongside of that, I realized there's a lot more to it than that. But my point in saying all of that is that I have, met and worked with thousands of women through the years who have suffered some significant violence, dysfunction, loss, trauma in their lives. And I'm honored to have been able to work with all of these women and children. But one of the things that has moved me the most, has really broken my heart the most, I'll say, is recognizing how early family dysfunction, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, betrayal. It doesn't have to be a huge, I call the big T, the one we all think of if we think of trauma, but just the day in and day out, perhaps dismissal of your feelings or not having your back, right? Just sort of the day-to-day insults to your integrity can create a sense of not being able to trust people and not feeling safe in the world. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details of that. You can imagine working in sexual abuse, domestic violence, rape crisis work, child abuse, and families in poverty, that there were plenty of reasons that the folks that I worked with might not have trusted other people, might not have trusted the system, might not have trusted themselves in the world. And the most heartbreaking of all of that is how those experiences cause us, because I don't separate myself from my clients there, but for the grace of God, I have experienced some of those things in my life, maybe not to the degree and severity that others have, but I can certainly relate with this feeling that I can't even trust myself. I can't trust my own body, right? I can't make good decisions. I don't know, I don't feel like I know what's right or wrong. And that's a terrible way to have to walk through and operate in the world. But it comes as a result of, there's two things primarily. I've already referred to. One is if there's been any kind of abuse or even neglect, particularly in some kind of inappropriate sexual behavior, and a child comes forward to share that with an adult who they should be able to trust, who should have their back, who should stand up for them and protect them, and in that moment they get dismissed, they get told to be quiet, they get told that they must have been making it up, that they must have imagined it, that that never could have happened, that Uncle so-and-so or Grandpa would never have done that. Or even worse, if a child is punished for bringing something like that forward, because now they're exposing the family's secret, and they're hit or they're punished, or they're told if they ever say that again, they're going to get what's coming to them. And so the child is completely shut down. And what happens, whether it's a younger child or well into their teens, is, did that really happen? Did I make that up? Right? Can I trust my body? Can I trust my instincts? Can I trust my gut to know what's real and what's not real? It's particularly insidious if the person who is the perpetrator confuses a child even further by saying things like, this is how people show their love to each other, or I'm doing this because you're so special, or you're going to really enjoy this, while a child is feeling afraid, trapped, physically hurt, right? So there's a real disconnect in that experience. And whether it happens once or over time, it's different for every child in every situation. Their dial on their own inner guidance, on their own intuition, in being able to trust their gut, their intuition, their instincts, gets turned way down. So that's one aspect. Another way of looking at this, and this is a little bit different, but this is for children who may have come into the world with gifts of seeing, gifts of hearing, gifts of being able to sense other spirits or energies in the room. And they may have been shut down if they tried to share that with an adult or another person. It may not have fit into their family belief system. It may have not fit into their religious or cultural belief system. And so once again, in a very different set of circumstances, a child who's having a very real experience is being told basically that the experience didn't happen. There's no such thing, right? You just imagined that, and you need to stop talking about those things because it doesn't fit into our belief system. And so for a variety of reasons, again, that trust dial is turned down. And depending on the person, and again, and what the circumstances were and the support system they may have had, they have a very hard time learning to trust themselves again. And it can lead to all kinds of issues later in life, whether it's promiscuity or addiction or depression or high anxiety, right? Or just procrastinating in life because I can't make a decision, right? But it's living with this sense of mistrust of self and then not feeling safe in the decisions that I make. So I'm going to suggest a couple of things here today. If you're someone who struggles with trusting yourself for whatever reason, it might be something I mentioned, it might be something entirely different, but if you grew up being told you weren't smart enough, or you didn't know what you were doing, or you weren't very good at something, right? You may struggle doing your taxes in math, or because you were told you weren't good in math. I mean, this comes, everybody's got their own version of this. But I'm going to invite you to do a few things. I listened to Lee Harris, who is a channel, among other things. And I happened to be listening to one of his videos yesterday, and he made a few suggestions that I really liked in terms of, this was couched in getting in touch with your own intuition. But for me, it feels very much in the same ballpark, learning to trust your inner guidance, right? So that you can trust yourself again. So he suggested a few different things that I thought were beautiful ideas, and I've been doing them myself, over the last 24 hours. And one is, if you're faced with a decision, even if it's what to have for lunch, right? You got a couple of different choices there. You got some leftover pizza, and then maybe you have a salad, right? And so to just stop, maybe sit down, get quiet for a moment, and just say, which of these is my best choice? And then bring one of them to mind. Notice what might be happening in your body, and it may be very subtle. If you've turned down the signals in your body, it may be very subtle, but just notice what you feel, and then let that go and bring the other choice to mind, and just notice how that feels in your body. Again, in the beginning, it may be a very subtle difference. Or perhaps you're in the grocery store trying to decide, which, fruit or vegetable or something to buy, and just checking in with the two choices and seeing if you can start to become aware of some little sense of aliveness or energy moving, right? That might guide you to one choice or the other. I often do this with a pendulum, if you happen to have a pendulum, or just a string with a washer on the end, and check with your pendulum for a yes or a no. And the more you do it, the more confident you become. And then after a while, it's like the information comes to you before you even have to ask. So that's one choice. Another way to get in touch with your inner knowing, your inner guidance, your guides, right? Your soul, however you want to classify that, is to spend not even 5 minutes, but each morning, shortly after you wake up, spend up to 5 minutes, just sit down with pencil and paper and simply ask the question, what does my soul want to say to me today? Or what does my soul want me to know today? Sort of like Neale Donald Walsch does, right? God, this is what God wants you to know today. But this is just you and your higher self, you and your soul communing. And then put pen to paper and just write for a minute, 2 minutes. Really, that all it needs to be to just get the flow of energy going. And try to write continuously. Don't stop and read what you wrote. And you will find over time, and I can attest to this because I started writing, sort of this kind of writing years ago, and I was amazed with what came through. And it may not be some, major prediction or whatever. It may just be simply loving language that you don't usually use when you're speaking to yourself. I know when I started writing things like Dear One or Beloved One, and I would be like, who the hell is writing that? Because it's not a way that I was speaking to myself at that time. But if that's what's coming through, don't dismiss it. It doesn't have to be some major revelation. It can simply be 2 or 3 sentences of soft, nurturing, loving language coming through. And this is the way you begin to open that connection to your soul, to your higher self, to your inner knowing, however you want to call that. But it basically helps to begin to build trust with yourself that you can get clear information. You can start to make decisions, choosing between one thing or another, knowing that it's not the clanging head that wants to overanalyze everything, right? And get into analysis paralysis. It's you listening to your own guidance. The other things I want to say really quickly before I move on is it's also important as you move along this journey of self-trust, which is also connected to self-love, right? That you begin to turn down the volume of the other loud voices in your life. whether those are other people, whether it's the news, whether it's Facebook, or what you're listening to on YouTube. I know for a while there, and I'm still a little bit guilty of it, I could go to YouTube to look for meditation and I could get caught looking at political videos or something, right? You really want to turn down the dial on everything in your life that is not supporting your highest connections and your highest guidance. And that includes asking other people their advice or talking to other people about your dreams. Unless you know it's someone you can fully trust to support you, to listen to you, to have your back. But a lot of times, if it's family, if it's long-standing relationships, people at work, whatever it might happen to be, those are not necessarily the people you want to be asking for advice. One, because it's coming from their own self, wounded as it is. It may often be reactive, and it isn't necessarily what's best for you. They don't know what's best for you. And what happens again is when we ask too many people, we run around, like Chicken Little, asking too many people, then we just confuse ourselves further, and we get right back to that place about, I don't know what to do, I can't make a decision, whatever. And it just reinforces that you are not trustworthy. You want to become trustworthy, worthy of your own trust. So cut out the noise that's not supporting you. Stop looking to other people for their ideas or their advice about what you should be doing, and start practicing a couple of little practices that will help you begin to come back into your own body and begin to trust yourself and the guidance that's coming to you that's best for you in your life. All righty. I'm going to wrap it up right there and continue my walk on this beautiful day. So grateful to be out and about. Oh, I have a client in a little while. I need to get home. I just realized that. Okay. Blessings to you all. Namaste. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye now.